time movie-loving maniacs. This here is a spoiler review of Furious 7. Now I'm doing this video so I can go more in-depth about my thoughts and opinions on Furious 7. So if you haven't seen Furious 7, don't watch this video. Go ahead and put on your watch later list, go see Furious 7, and then come back to watch this video. Unless you really don't care about spoilers, hey, you're more than welcome. Otherwise, you've been warned. Alright, if you're still here, you want shit ruined for you, here we go. Alright, now first off, I gotta talk about the opening of this movie, because the opening of this movie introduces us to Deckard Shaw, played by Jason Statham, and I love how they set him up, and it's how the film opens. Like, this series never ceases to amaze me of how they open it up. They open it up, Jason Statham in a hospital over Luke Evans, who plays Owen Shaw in the last movie. Owen Shaw, he's all dead and hospitalized. And Jason Statham vows to get revenge on Dominic's crew for killing him. And then the camera just follows Jason Statham. We see those two nurses. They're in awe and scared of him. Jason Statham tells them, "Take care of my brother. And if you don't, I'll find out." And then from there, the camera just follows him all throughout the hospital. And we see that Jason Statham, he caused all that damage throughout the hospital. He went through all the security guards and nurses, and he just killed people. The place is all blown up. We see that Deckard Shaw, he is here to raise havoc. He means business, like his brother before him. I like it because it shows that Deckard Shaw, he is specially trained and he is here to wreck shit up. Then we cut to Dom and Letty. They are on their way to Race Wars, and I love that because it is a reference to the very first movie. I like how Dom's like, Race Wars? We invented it. But Dom is trying to help Letty get her memory back, and I love that because it expands upon the last movie. Anyway, Letty enters this race and she wins. And then everybody crowds around her, and all her old memory starts to come back to her, but she's struggling with it. She starts having panic attacks. And then she leaves, and Dom is right there. I like that scene because not only it makes up for a sweet cameo, and I'm not talking about Iggy Azalea's pointless cameo, I'm talking about Hector from the very first movie. We get to see Hector. He's like, "Hey, yo, Dom, Letty, she still got it, man." And Dom's like, "Yeah, she does. What up, Hector?" And then later on, we cut back to Letty. She is at her grave. You can tell that she is scared. She doesn't know who she is, and Dom is trying to tell her who she is, but that's not enough. And so Letty leaves him for a while. She leaves, but then she comes back 20 minutes later within the film. But I like the ending of the film when Dom, everybody thinks he's dead, and then she's around him, hugging him. She tells him that I got my memories back. It just came back to me. And it's revealed that they got married when they were in the Dominican Republic in the fourth movie. I just love that whole story arc because it expands upon the sixth film, and we get to see Letty. She starts to come back into who she is. Now back to Deckard Shaw. Jason Statham, there's this one scene where Jason Statham fights The Rock in the movie. Now, even though that is an awesome fight, but let's be real, there is no way Jason Statham is going to beat The Rock. The Rock is just too strong for that. Which is why I like that they had the good sense to say that it was a draw by having Jason Statham throw a grenade. And The Rock falls out the building and he breaks his arm and then he's in the hospital. But the point is, I don't care how specially trained in the military you are not beating The Rock. The fight between Letty and Ronda Rousey, I'm not sure who won that fight, but come on, let's be real. Ronda Rousey, she is too good of an MMA fighter. And since when did Letty become such a good fighter? Even Ludacris early on in the movie when he's trying to hack the system up in Dubai, and the guards find out, and the guards about to approach him, but then Ludacris, he just does like some kung fu karate stuff on him like he's James Bond or something. I'm like, okay, this is clearly going a little overboard right here. Because it's like, when did all the characters become so good at fighting? I mean, like, Dom, he's a street fighter, so I guess. Brian, he was in the FBI for God's sake, so he has to know how to fight. Letty, yeah, sure, I guess. Even Tyrese in the movie, he is from the streets, so he has to know some street fighting skills. But Ludacris, he is the tech guy. When does he ever have time to learn how to fight? Like they do. Tony Jaa in this movie, this dude can fight, and when he was thrown down with Paul Walker, he was giving Paul Walker a run for his money. But there is no way Paul Walker could have beat Tony Jaa either. So it was a bit unreal when Brian beat Tony Jaa in the movie. I said in my spoiler-free review that the action was back and forth with me, because especially with the two scenes that I really wish they really hadn't showed in the trailers. Like the first scene where they dropped out of the plane in their cars, and then when they got close to land, the parachutes came out, and I'm like, alright, look, I'm not no expert on the laws of physics, but there is no way a parachute can hold anything as heavy as a car. And then, of course, you have the scene where they hijack that bus to save Natalie Emanuel's character. And holy crap, she is attractive in this movie. I like her character, but she does not look like no hacker. But that's one of the things I love about this movie is how self-aware it was, because the scene where where Tyrese and Ludacris, they were talking, and Tyrese was like, she does not look like a hacker. And Luda was like, well, what does a hacker look like, Tyrese? And Tyrese just says, hey, that's not a body that sits behind a desk all day. I'm like, thank you, Tyrese. Now, getting back to the bus sequence, even though I wish they hadn't showed that in the plane sequence in the trailer, it was actually my favorite action sequence in the entire movie. And seeing it all together and sequenced together, it was just fun going from the plane to the road to the bus to Paul Walker finding Tony Jaa and trying to get himself out of the bus before it falls off that cliff, and Michelle Rodriguez saving him. I love that entire sequence. I was on the edge of my seat throughout that whole scene. And of course, during that scene, Decker Shaw comes out of nowhere because he is hunting Dom and his crew. And to find out the people behind that bus was led by Diamond Hysun's character. Like I said, that whole section in the movie was my favorite part of the movie. I just wish they didn't show most of it in the trailers, because I would have enjoyed it even more if they didn't, so that I can experience watching it for the first time in the theater with a big crowd. After they save Natalie Emanuel's character, they all go to Dubai so that they can get the chip, and that section of the film, I felt that's when they got a little Mission Impossible. You know, you got the fight between Michelle Rodriguez and Ronda Rousey that I mentioned earlier, and apparently everyone thinks they're a superhero when Ludacris is fighting. But the other part that I wish they didn't show in the trailer was when Dom and Brian were in the car and they went from one building to another. But I appreciate that scene because what they didn't show in the trailer was that he didn't just go through 2 buildings, he went through 3 buildings. And I was on the edge of my seat throughout that whole section as well. Through that scene, they finally get the chip so that they can give to Mr. Nobody, so that they can activate the God's Eye that Mr. Nobody has. And speaking of Mr. Nobody, he's played by Russell Crowe, and it was fun seeing Russell Crowe in this movie. I really haven't seen him in a movie since Quentin Tarantino's Death Proof, and seeing him in this movie, it was poetic justice, because the last movie that he was in was a car movie. Now he's in another car movie, and he looked like he wasn't just phoning it in. He looked like he was actually having a good time and having fun with the role in the movie. And I hope we get to see him more in future movies. If they do more movies. I'm going to talk more on that later. So they track down Shaw, and they find out that Shaw is working with Diamond Hansu's character. And so they took the chip, and they all go back to L.A. And so now Dom and his crew, they all have to go back to L.A. to stop Jason Statham and his crew. And from there, it makes up for a sweet, awesome climax. There's all kinds of havoc going on between the drones, and the fight between Tony Jaa and Paul Walker, and the fight between Dom and Jason Statham. You know, apparently they were fighting with sticks, which again was a little unrealistic because Shaw, he's this special military force fighter, and then Dom, he's a street fighter, but then apparently he can go up against Jason Statham in the movie. And he was using wrench and sticks or whatever. It's a little illogical, but hey, that's what I'm saying. You gotta check your brain off doing this movie, because nothing, as far as the action goes, really makes sense. You just gotta sit back and enjoy it for what it is. Now, as much illogical it was still a cool fight to watch until the very end of that fight, when Diamond Hansu, he's in the helicopter, he shoots a rocket at the place they're fighting on, and the building collapses, and then Dom, he just Hulk smashes on the ground, and then Jason Statham falls with the concrete or whatever. And I'm like, so Vin Diesel think he's the Hulk now? Another negative I have for this movie is that The Rock, he's in the beginning of the movie and then he doesn't come back to the end of the movie, during the climax. And I really wish there was more of him in the movie. But when he's on the screen, it's worth it. And they make up for it during the climax of the movie. Like, he's in the hospital, he has a cast on, and he has a daughter in this movie apparently. And then he looks out, he sees that Dom and them, they're in trouble, and he's like, Daddy's gotta go to work. And he just breaks the cast off, and he just goes out there. And then he goes out there with that machine gun and just starts. And even when he first arrives, he sees Letty, and Letty tells him, did you bring the cavalry, Hobbs? And then Hobbs is like, woman, I am the cavalry. That's why The Rock is awesome. Now there's 2 more things I want to talk about. First off, Lucas Black's cameo in the movie. In my spoiler-free review, I said that was a wasted opportunity. Alright, see, what happened is, Dom finds out that Han is dead, so he goes to Tokyo Drift to take his body back to LA. And that's where the last 2 minutes of Tokyo Drift comes in. And we see Bow Wow, he tells Lucas Black's character, hey, yo, Sean, there's a new guy that says that you're the new TK, and he wants to meet you, and that he knew Han. And so they cut that race out, and Sean is like, damn, I knew you was fast, but I didn't know you were that fast. But all his cameo is like 5 minutes. All he's there for is to give Dom a Ziploc bag that has a picture of Giselle that Han had in his car when he was murdered. So that Dom can put that picture on Han's casket at Han's funeral. It's nothing more, nothing less. And I say that was a wasted opportunity because it's like you could have bring Shaw with you back to LA. You could have had him on your team and help you bring down Shaw. Otherwise, this doesn't really do anything for Tokyo Drift. And now, when anybody, including myself, is going to watch Tokyo Drift, we're going to look at Tokyo Drift as that one that was really unnecessary and it's just there and was pointless. Like, you really could have bring Sean on here since Brian, aka Paul Walker, he's not in these movies anymore. I feel like Sean, he'd be the perfect person to fill that void. And it could have been like a pass the mantle type thing. And now the biggest highlight of the movie, Paul Walker. I said he had a good send-off in the movie. And throughout the whole movie, they really set that up. Like, there's a scene where Dom and Brian, they're on the plane, and Dom tells him, Brian, the bravest thing you've ever done was start a family with Mia. And they just set that up throughout the whole movie. And then later on in the film, Brian, he's on the phone with Mia, and he pretty much promises her that he'll return. And then by the end of the movie, they're on the beach. Brian, Mia, and their son, they're on the beach, and Mia is pregnant again. And everyone else, including Dom, they're all looking at them, and like Tyrese is like, yeah, this is where he belongs. Everything's gonna be different now. And I'm like what they really mean is with Paul Walker gone, everything really is going to be different since he's no longer part of this franchise if they continue. And so Dom's getting ready to leave, and then Letty's like, so you're not gonna say goodbye? And Dom's like, this isn't goodbye. And so we cut to Dom, he's driving, but then Brian, he pulls up in the other car, and Brian's like, so you thought you could just leave without saying goodbye? And then Brian's all smiling, and then Dom, he starts giving a monologue, a really good heartfelt monologue, and it also montages through footage of Paul Walker in all the previous movies. Like, the montage was like, no matter what happens, you'll always be my brother. And then after that, they finally drive off together, and then the roads start to divide, Brian goes one way, and then Dom goes the other way. And I love that symbolism. I'll admit, I started to get a little choked up at that part, because like it symbolizes that Brian, he's going another direction, heaven, and then Dom, he's going back with the others. Another good symbolism in that scene is something that's probably not even a symbolism, but Brian, he's going straight, and Dom, he's actually curving. And then if you really look at it, it's actually a 7. And it was like, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but hey, if it was, clever. And so the two of them go their separate ways, and then the camera pans up to the sky, and the title card says, for Paul. Like, I swear, I've never cried during a movie, but hey, tears. I actually wanted to cry at that moment. In conclusion, Furious 7, it was a good send-off to Paul Walker, but outside of that, the action in this movie was a complete mixed bag, but it didn't detract from the overall movie, because the movie still had a good story, Don Letty's story was good, it was a good send-off to Paul Walker, the action was still fun, great villain, great new characters. The Rock is not in it as much, but when he's on the screen, it was still great. I still advocate that this is a good movie, even though I shitted on this movie probably more than I really wanted to. I really still did legitimately enjoy this movie. And I advocate that this is a good way to start off the summer movie season. And I really hope that they don't make any more films after this because, and to be honest, I actually thought this was a good ending to the series. And I hope they really don't do any more after this because if they're not going to do anything with Sean from Tokyo Drift, then honestly, I can't really see the series without Paul and any other characters. Like at this point, you've also brought the franchise full circle, actually tying in to Tokyo Drift, and I can't really see y'all doing anything else after that. If anything, I'd much rather see a spinoff with The Rock's character. But hey, like I said in my other review, hats off to Universal for not capitalizing off the death of Paul Walker for this movie, because they really could have easily just been like, hey, Paul Walker's dead, everybody and their mom's gonna come out to go see this, let's put him in all the ads, let's make all the trailers about him, let's try to make the movie about him, but like, someone at the studio had the good sense to be like, no, we don't need to do that. And the credit also goes, and I totally forgot to mention this in the spoiler-free review, but hats off to James Wan as well, because he is the director of this movie after James Wan directed the previous 4 movies. And he was put upon an impossible situation, but hey, he made it work. And I thought this was actually a good James Wan movie, because James Wan, he's actually a horror director. And I thought this was a good start for him as an action director. And I can't wait to see anything else he does in the future, outside of horror. And he definitely got this movie back on track. And like I said, I really hope they don't make any more movies after this, but let's be real, this movie is going to make shit $1 trillion because this movie is going to have what I like to call the Dark Knight effect. It's when one of the actors, when one of the main characters dies during the movie, and everybody finds out about it. I'm not saying that's a good thing, it's a tragedy that happened, I'm just saying, he dies and that gets everybody talking, and that makes up for publicity, and so that movie's probably going to make $1 billion. Obviously, I'm referring to Heath Ledger playing the Joker in The Dark Knight. And so I think that that situation is going to happen with Furious 7. With Paul Walker gone, everybody and their mom is going to go to see this movie. And I really hope this movie does make $1 billion, though. I'm even willing to put money on it. If this movie does make $1 billion, it probably will make another Fast and Furious movie. Vin Diesel's going to buy himself 2 houses in Dubai, and at some point he's going to be like, yeah, I could go for doing that again. Sure, why not? I gave this movie an A- for full price, and I stand by that review. Well, I'm finally done watching Fast and Furious movies, so now I can continue on with the Marvel Marathon leading up to the Avengers Age of Ultron. And it was definitely fun going down memory lane with these movies, though. That's it for the day. Like what you see, subscribe to this channel, subscribe to my other channel. The links are in the description below. And be sure to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. Peace.